Hey everyone, it's Miss Joyce. Today we'll be adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators with regrouping. Let's start by adding 1 and 3/4 plus 2/4. We're going to represent both of these fractions using visual models. Here we have 1 whole and 3/4 of another whole shaded plus 2/4. When we're adding fractions and mixed numbers, we always start by adding the fractions. Just like if we were adding decimals, we always start by adding the smallest place value. So we have 3/4 plus 2/4, which equals 5/4. And now we can add the whole numbers. 1 whole plus no wholes equals 1 whole. So we have 1 and 5/4. But if you notice, the numerator 5 is larger than the denominator 4. So that means that there's at least one whole that we can rewrite or take out of the fraction to add to the 1 whole in our whole number. So we're going to rewrite this fraction. Here we have 1 and 5/4. We're going to spread this out or break it apart. So we have 1 whole coming from the 1 whole in the front plus 4/4 because we're taking out 1 whole from the fraction. And we're going to add 1 more fourth because 4/4 plus 1/4 gets us the 5/4, which was our fraction. Well, remember, 4/4 is the same as 1 whole. So we can rewrite this as 1 whole, and now we can add 1 plus 1 is 2, plus the 1/4 is 2 and 1/4. So 1 and 3/4 plus 2/4 is equal to 2 and 1/4. Let's try another problem. Here we have 3 and 4/5 plus 1 and 3/5. We'll use visual models to represent both of these fractions. Here we have 3 wholes and 4/5 shaded of another whole plus 1 and 3/5. Let's first start by adding the fractions. 4/5 plus 3/5 is equal to 7/5. Now we can add the wholes. 3 wholes plus 1 whole equals 4 wholes. So we have 4 and 7/5. But the numerator 7 is larger than the denominator 5. So that means we can pull out at least 1 whole. So we're going to rewrite this fraction. What we're going to do is break apart this whole number in fraction. So we have the 4 from the whole number, plus we're going to take out 1 whole, which is 5/5, plus, well, if we're at 5/5 and we need to get to 7/5, we're going to add 2 more fifths. So we've just broken apart this mixed number. Now remember, 5/5 is the same as 1 whole. So now we can add these whole numbers to the fraction. The leftover fraction is 2/5, and 4 plus 1 is 5. So our answer, or sum, is 5 and 2/5. Now let's try a subtraction problem. Here we have 1 minus 1/3. Let's start with our visual model where we have 3 parts that are all shaded. And we know that there are 3 parts because the denominator in the second fraction we're subtracting is 3. So this is representing 1 whole. We are going to be taking away 1/3 or one of the shaded parts. We'll notice here, when we're subtracting fractions, we need to be taking it away from a fraction. But there's no fractions here. There's 0/3 that are shaded because we have 1 whole shaded. We can rewrite this 1 whole as a fraction. So 1 whole is the same as 3/3. Now we can subtract 3/3 minus 1/3. So we have 3/3 shaded. We're going to cross off one of those thirds. We can see that there are still 2/3 shaded. So we just had to make sure that we rewrote that 1 whole as a fraction. So 1 minus 1/3 is 2/3. Now let's try another. Here we have 1 and 1/3 minus 2/3. So here we're going to start by representing 1 whole and 1/3 of another whole shaded. If we're looking at the fractions, because remember we always start by adding and subtracting the fractions first, we can't do 1/3 minus 2/3 because we don't have enough parts shaded in the second whole to take away 2 parts. we need to rewrite this mixed number as a fraction greater than 1 in order to get a bigger numerator. So what we're going to do is multiply the denominator 3 times the whole number 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus the numerator 1 on top. 3 plus 1 is 4. So 1 and 1/3 is equivalent to 4/3, which makes sense because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts shaded out of 3. Now we can subtract the 2/3. We have 4/3 minus 2/3. So we're going to cross off 2 of the shaded parts. We can still see there are 2 parts shaded. So 4/3 minus 2/3 is 2/3. Here we have 4 minus 1 and 3/4. So we'll start by drawing 4 holes all completely shaded. Well, remember, we have to start by adding and subtracting the fractions. Well, in this first number, there are no fractions. There are 0/4. So we are going to have to rewrite 4 so that we have a fraction next to it. We can take out 1 whole from 4 to rewrite this as 3 and 4/4. Because remember, 4/4 is the same as 1 whole. So this is saying that there are 3 holes shaded, 1, 2, 3. And in this last hole, there are 4 parts shaded out of 4. We have to do this so that we can start by subtracting the fractions first. 3 and 4/4 minus 1 and 3/4. So in our visual model, we'll cross off 1 whole and 1, 2, 3 parts out of 4 of the next hole. When we do this, we can see that we have 1/4 shaded in this hole here, and we have 2 holes completely shaded. So 3 and 4/4 minus 1 and 3/4 is equal to 2 and 1/4. Here's our last problem. We have 3 and 2/4 minus 1 and 3/4. So let's first represent this as visual models. 3 holes and 2/4 shaded up another hole. If we started by subtracting the fractions, we have 2/4 minus 3/4. All right, so we can't do 2 minus 3 as is. So we need to rewrite these mixed numbers as fractions greater than 1. We can do that by multiplying the denominator 4 times the whole number 3. We know that 4 times 3 is 12, plus the numerator 2. 12 plus 2 is 14. So the numerator on top is 14, and the denominator 4 stays the same. We're going to do the same for this next mixed number. We're going to multiply the denominator 4 times the whole number 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus the numerator 3. 4 plus 3 is 7. So the numerator on top is 7, and the denominator 4 stays the same. So this is saying 14/4, that we have a total of 14 parts shaded, and each hole is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. We are subtracting 7/4, so we need to cross off 7 shaded parts. We're going to do that here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we look at our visual model, we can see that there are still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts shaded. So 14/4 minus 7/4 is equal to 7/4. But remember, this numerator on top is bigger than the denominator on the bottom, so we can take out at least 1 whole. 7/4 is the same as 1 whole completely shaded and 3 out of the 4 parts shaded of the next hole. So 3 and 2/4 minus 1 and 3/4 is equal to 1 and 3/4.